This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to Asean in Focus. Joining me today is our EBC ASEAN Bureau Chief. Hello, Cristel.
Hi, Alma, and to all our viewers. Yes, I am Cristel Mapa from EBC Thailand Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, U.S. President Joe Biden has led global condemnation of an absolutely outrageous crackdown by Myanmar's junta that left more than 100 people, including several children, dead in the bloodiest day since the coup 2 months ago.
An Indonesian cathedral was rocked by a suspected suicide bombing on Sunday, with body parts littering the chaotic scene as non-Muslims inside celebrated the start of Holy Week.
Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana assured the public that the government is ready to defend the sovereignty and protect the marine resources of our country.
Working out with aging equipment in his modest gym, 72-year-old Malaysian bodybuilder still pumps iron every day and believes staying healthy with a vigorous routine is the best defense against the coronavirus.
First, U.S. President Joe Biden has led global condemnation of an absolutely outrageous crackdown by Myanmar's junta that left more than 100 people, including several children, dead in the bloodiest day since the coup 2 months ago. At least 107 more people were killed on Saturday, according to the United Nations, as the regime staged a major show of might for Armed Forces Day, an annual parade showcasing Myanmar's military prowess. Take a look.
Reaction to what happened in Myanmar?
It's terrible. It's absolutely outrageous. And based on the reporting I've gotten, an awful lot of people have been killed totally unnecessarily.
Senator Chris Murphy said he's been concerned about that for a year.
Soldiers and police have killed hundreds in brutal suppression against weeks of mass protests demanding a restoration of democracy and the release of detained civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Meanwhile, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, or AAPP, monitoring group, the death toll from crackdowns since the February 1 coup has climbed to at least 459. AAPP said a further 13 people were killed on Sunday, as funerals were also held for some of the victims after the deadliest day of violence in the 8 weeks since the coup. In Mandalay, the country's cultural capital, the family of Ai Ko mourned at a funeral service after he was killed overnight. Despite the dangers, protesters hit the streets again Sunday in parts of commercial hub Yangon and several other cities around Myanmar. A 16-year-old boy lost his hand in one Yangon neighborhood while trying to lob back a grenade that security forces had thrown at protesters, according to a rescue worker. The UN put Saturday's death toll at 107, including 7 children, but expected it to rise further.
In a related news, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Saturday that Washington was horrified by the killings carried out by Myanmar security forces, blasting the military's reign of terror. And I quote, "We are horrified by the bloodshed perpetrated by Burmese security forces, showing that the junta will sacrifice the lives of the people to serve the few," Blinken said in a tweet. The courageous people of Burma reject the military's reign of terror.
Meanwhile, the UN chief condemned in the strongest terms the killing of the dozens of civilians, including children and young people, by security forces in Myanmar. In a statement issued by Deputy Spokesman Farhan Haq, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the continuing military crackdown is unacceptable and demands a firm, unified, and resolute international response. Here's more.
Visit to the United Nations on Monday. In a statement, the Secretary General's Special Envoy on Myanmar, Christine Schraner Bergener, said she remains deeply disturbed by ongoing violence committed by the country's security forces. Tomorrow, Armed Forces Day, marks Myanmar's liberation from foreign power. The Special Envoy said that ensuring peace and defending the people should be the responsibility of any military. But in Myanmar, the Tatmadaw has turned against its own citizens. Women, youth, and children have been among those killed. The Special Envoy calls for the release of all those detained, including President U Win Myint and State Councillor Daw Aung San Suu Kyi. As Myanmar's Tingyan New Year approaches in April, the Special Envoy appeals for basic rights and democratic norms to be upheld in the greater interest of the nation's prosperity under civilian rule. The Special Envoy will continue to amplify the Secretary General's call for a firm, unified international response, bilaterally and collectively, towards the restoration of the democratically elected government of Myanmar. She also supports the Security Council's calls for a peaceful solution through constructive dialogue and practical reconciliation in the interests of the people of Myanmar. The World Health Organization in the country strongly condemns attacks on healthcare providers and sites since the military takeover on the 1st of February. WHO says that between the 1st of February and the 24th of March, there have been 32 attacks on healthcare facilities and staff, resulting in 2 deaths and 6 injuries. Dozens of facilities and several ambulances have been affected in 12 states and regions. WHO says the continuing use of force against healthcare workers, including the reported occupation by security forces in hospitals, is taking a devastating toll on Myanmar's health system.
Now, hundreds more were wounded and detained during the seemingly coordinated attacks in over 40 locations throughout the country, and thousands have been arbitrarily arrested, many subjected to enforced disappearance. The UN officials called on the military to immediately stop killing the very people it has the duty to serve and protect.
Staying in Myanmar, a fire from a hurled Molotov cocktail broke out early Friday at the party headquarters of the post-civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar's largest city, a party official said. The country has been in uproar since the military ousted the Nobel laureate in a lightning putsch on February 1, triggering an uprising demanding a return to democracy. Her party, the National League for Democracy, has been in disarray since the coup, with some of its elected MPs in hiding. At about 4 a.m. Friday, an attacker hurled a Molotov cocktail at its Yangon headquarters, causing a brief fire. When the presidents nearby knew about the fire, they called the fire service department to put it out. It was under control by around 5 a.m. So when an NLD member in charge of the headquarters told AFP, he said only the entrance of the office was scorched and party members were already inside assessing the damage. The incident comes on the eve of Armed Forces Day, when the military will put on a show of strength with its annual parade. Fears have been swirling that the day could become a flashpoint.
In other news, an Indonesian cathedral was rocked by a suspected suicide bombing, with body parts littering the chaotic scene as non-Muslims inside celebrated the start of Holy Week. Take a look.
Dilaporkan sekitar pukul 10.35 waktu Indonesia bagian tengah, ya, tadi terjadi ledakan bom yang diduga pelaku bom bunuh diri di depan gereja katedral di Jalan Rajulalido, Makassar. Sementara data awal yang kita sampaikan, satu korban yang dipastikan sebagai pelaku bom bunuh diri tersebut. Kemudian ada 9 masyarakat 5 petugas gereja dan 4 jamaah yang saat ini sedang dalam perawatan.
Suaranya?
Getarannya jangan ditanya lagi. Ya jelasnya bergetar sampai dampaknya kaca-kaca hotel itu berjatuhan.
The suicide bombing at the Indonesian Catholic Cathedral on Palm Sunday was carried out by 2 members of pro-Islamic State extremist group, blamed for other church blasts, including a deadly 2019 attack in the Philippines, according to police. About 20 worshippers were injured by the powerful explosion outside the church in Makassar City on Sulawesi Island as they celebrated the start of the Holy Week. Both suspects in the attack were killed as they rode a motorbike into the compound of the church, setting off what authorities said was an improvised explosive device known as a pressure cooker bomb. Now, late Sunday, National Police Chief Listio Sigit Prabowo said both attackers, a man and a woman, were members of the Jamaat Ansharut Daulah, or JAD, an extremist group also blamed for a deadly church bombing in Indonesia's second biggest city, Surabaya, in 2018. Prabowo did not give names or say how they were identified, but forensic examiners were performing DNA tests on body parts scattered at the grisly scene. Prabowo said, quote, there were 2 perpetrators killed. One is a man and another one is a woman. They're members of the JAD group, which carried out a bomb attack in Jolo in the Philippines, unquote. It wasn't clear if the pair were a married couple. An Indonesian militant and his wife, members of JAD, were blamed for 2 explosions that ripped through a Catholic church on the Philippine Muslim-majority island of Jolo back in 2019, killing worshippers at Sunday Mass and security forces. Indonesian President Joko Widodo said he strongly condemned this act of terror.
Meanwhile, in Philippines, more quarantine control points are established in several areas in Metro Manila as enhanced community quarantine takes effect today until April 4. National Capital Region Police Chief Major General Vicente Dano Jr. said the checkpoints are implemented at Susana Heights Tollgate, Alabang Tollgate, Philinvest Tollgate, Sukat Tollgate, Bikutan Tollgate, Skyway Entry, Nicos Tollgate, and Balon Bato Balintawak, Quezon City. Dano said apart from these control points, about 929 other checkpoints are manned by some 7,876 personnel in highly visible areas, but these are less restrictive, which means it is mainly for anti-criminality, anti-terrorism, and dragnet operations. He said under ECQ, police manning checkpoints restrict the movement of persons not allowed outside their homes and facilitate the movement of authorized persons outside of residence and essential goods and services. Earlier, Lieutenant General Cesar Hawthorne Binag, commander of the Philippine National Police Joint Task Force COVID Shield, said they would deploy 7,876 cops in 929 checkpoint areas in the National Capital Region, 982 cops in 162 control points in Central Luzon, particularly in Bulacan, and 498 policemen in 15 quarantine control points in Calabar Zone, particularly in the provinces of Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal.
To Vietnam now, the Bac Ninh Provincial Department of Health reported 3 cases of COVID-19 relapse on Sunday, affirming these cases pose no risk of community transmission. Now, these patients numbered 1565, 1702, and 1977 had been treated at the Bac Ninh Provincial General Hospital and the National Hospital for Tropical Diseases in Hanoi's Dong An District, according to VGP News. They had tested negative thrice before being discharged from the hospitals and continued self-isolation at home for another 14 days. On March 25, they got their samples diagnosed and were re-hospitalized after authorities confirmed positive results. The department called on all residents to strictly follow the Ministry of Health's SK message, which is Kao Trang, meaning face mask, Ku Kuwan, meaning disinfection, Ko Ang Kak, meaning distance, Kong Tu Tap, meaning no gathering, and Kai Bao Ite, meaning health declaration. All right, Crystal and I will be back right after this short break.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the program. The Philippine military ordered the deployment of more Navy ships to the South China Sea Thursday amid a growing diplomatic row over a fleet of Chinese boats parked near a disputed reef. China claims almost the entirety of the resource-rich sea and was accused by the United States this week of efforts to intimidate and provoke others by parking its vessels near Whitsun Reef. Manila has ordered Beijing to recall 183 boats at the boomerang-shaped reef around 320 kilometers or 175 nautical miles west of Palawan Island, describing their presence as an incursion of its sovereign territory. Around 220 boats were detected by the Philippine Coast Guard on March 7, but only made public last weekend. A military aerial patrol over the reef on Monday found 183 were still there. China says the fishing boats are sheltering from poor weather near the reef, which it claims is part of the contested Spratly Islands. A spokesman for the Armed Forces of the Philippines said the additional Navy ships would carry out sovereignty patrols in the waterway.
In the related news, the Department of National Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana assured the public that the government is ready to defend the sovereignty and protect the marine resources of the country. We are ready to defend our national sovereignty and protect the marine resources of the Philippines. There will be an increased presence of Philippine Navy and Philippine Coast Guard ships to conduct sovereignty patrols and protect our fishermen in the West Philippine Sea, he said in a statement late Saturday night. Secretary Lorenzana also reiterated the country's call for the immediate withdrawal of Chinese vessels in the Julian Felipe Reef or Union Reefs in the West Philippine Sea. A Philippine Navy, he said, a Philippine Navy ship and a Philippine Coast Guard are currently in the area monitoring the actual situation there. The PAF, or the Philippine Air Force, deploys an element of as 211 jet aircraft every day with the same mission, he said. And he also said that our air and sea assets are ready to protect the sovereignty and sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea, he added. Now, he also said the DND is coordinating with other government agencies like the PCG and the Bureau of Aquatic and Fisheries Resources to coordinate its efforts in the WPS and Kalayaan Group or Municipality of Pag-asa. He said by securing the West Philippine Sea and its islands in the Kalayaan area, the Philippines reinforces its commitment to keeping the freedom of navigation and maintaining regional peace and stability. Last Thursday, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Wang Shilian, has paid a social call on President Duterte and assured that the Philippines need not worry over the presence of Chinese vessels in the Julian Felipe Reef that is within the country's exclusive economic zone.
More about this news, Philippine ambassador to Beijing, Jose Santiago Santa Romana, expects the situation at the Julian Felipe Reef to improve soon, but declined to give a time frame when the Chinese fishing vessels would leave the area. Despite this, Ambassador Santa Romana said the country must remain vigilant and closely monitor movements on the ground. Let's watch this.
We don't have to panic. No? Kung tatandaan natin nung mga 2 taon na, no, to 2019, nangyari din to first half of 2019. Pero no, nangyari sa Pag-asa, yung tinatawag nating swarming of Chinese militia or Chinese fishing boats. Nagkaroon din tayo ng protesta, nagkaroon ng diplomatic exchange. As a matter of fact, pumunta pa si Presidente dito, nakausap pa si President Xi. Tapos, nagkapaliwanagan. At through diplomacy, ay nagkalinawan. Tapos over time, nakita natin na unti-unting nawala or nabawasan yung mga Chinese ships doon. At tumuloy na sila kung ano man ang dapat nilang gawin na fishing or whatever they had to do. So, I look at this as a situation that we should be concerned with, but we don't have to panic about, and we should just exercise a high degree of vigilance, a high degree of monitoring, and see what happens on the ground. I expect that this matter can be resolved with an abundance of diplomacy, and given the friendly relations between the Philippines and China and their assurance that this is not a permanent situation, that is what we expect. No? Ang ayaw natin mangyari dito, na nandyan lang sila permanente or na magiging occupation or reclamation yan, no? Yun ang iniiwasan natin. Kaya sa pag-uusap, nagkalinawan naman na kasi sa punto natin, ito ay bahagi ng ating EEC. At dahil dito, yung fishing, yung whatever, pwedeng freedom of navigation, pwede kang dumaan, no? And if you seek shelter, as long as it's temporary. So yun ang tinitignan natin ngayon.
With the additional 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine set to arrive today, the Armed Forces of the Philippines has already expressed its readiness to help in the deployment of the vaccines, even in far-flung areas of the country. They said we will support in areas where we can, depending on our own operational deployments. We will also be providing sea, air, and land mobility, transportation assets for use in the deployment of PNP personnel and vaccinators, as well as in the transportation of vaccines. This, according to AFP spokesperson, Marine Major General Edgard Arevalo, in a statement last Sunday. He also said the AFP medical personnel also continue to provide key assistance in the vaccine deployment. Arevalo said the AFP and the police, under the supervision of the LGUs, will continue to man the checkpoints. The AFP reported that a total of 35,000, or rather 31,519 personnel have been inoculated with vaccines as of March 25. The figure includes 30,530 personnel who were vaccinated with Sinovac jabs and 989 personnel who were inoculated with the AstraZeneca vaccines. The AFP has also delivered 60,300 Sinovac vials and 1,520 doses of AstraZeneca jabs to 47 military treatment facilities. President Duterte is scheduled to witness on Monday the arrival of around 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine purchased by the Philippine government from Chinese drug maker Sinovac Biotech.
$100 million more children than were expected now have trouble reading because of school closures linked to COVID-19. The warning from UNESCO, the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Agency, comes in a new report which shows that basic reading skills were already on a downward curve before the pandemic. In 2020, instead of 460 million children having reading difficulties, that number jumped to 584 million as a result of the pandemic. Schooling has been disrupted for an average of 25 weeks since the beginning of the pandemic. UNESCO says with learning losses expected to be highest in the Latin America and Caribbean region, and in Central and Southern Asia. To tackle what the UN agency has called a potential generational catastrophe, it is calling for schools to reopen with greater support for teachers, initiatives to prevent pupils dropping out, and an acceleration of the availability of digital learning tools. It's convening education ministers from all over the world on Monday to discuss these recommendations.
Meanwhile, the Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, and partner government agencies officially launched on Friday the S-Pass, or Safe, Swift, and Smart Passage, a one-stop online communication and coordination platform for travelers and LGUs. At the virtual launch, DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Paz said it was developed by the DOST Region 6 to help local government units manage the travelers. During one of the meetings with the Interagency Task Force, it was suggested that S-Pass can be used on a wider scale. Take a look.
Alam niyo naman na napaka-importante ng science and technology dito sa laban against COVID-19. And I'm very happy with the launching ng S-Pass that we will have a very rigorous and very scientific approach to helping in the travel of people around the country, no? Especially in areas na we are trying to establish tourism bubbles and trying to establish more economic activity. Kung meron man challenge na, pinakamalaking challenge na dala kasi ng COVID-19 sa atin is the transportation of people, travel of people. So if there's anything that COVID has taught us, it's that we have to level up, we have to digitize, we have to look towards technological solutions.
DOST officials noted that the S-Pass is not a contact tracing app, but a platform where travelers could access the LGU's policies and submit the required documents. Some LGUs previously required travelers to secure a travel authority. Now, travelers may apply for a travel coordination permit, or TCP, as well as a travel through permit, the TPP, just by using the S-Pass. The DOST 6 Director Rowan Gelonga said travelers just need to open the website s-pass.ph and search for the intended LGU to check its travel policies and requirements. They must create an account if they need to apply for a TCP in restricted areas, or a TPP if their destination is unrestricted but will have to pass through restricted areas. Among the benefits of S-Pass to LGUs are they could verify the authenticity of travel documents presented by travelers, and they can effectively monitor and manage incoming travelers, according to Gelonga. Since it is online, LGUs can access the travelers' information, including their travel history. De La Peña, meanwhile, noted that travelers only need to register their mobile number, apply for the needed documents, and wait for the LGU's approval.
Muslim majority Indonesia on Friday banned an annual exodus that sees millions travel across the vast nation to mark the end of Ramadan over fears of a surge in COVID-19 infections. Travelers pack into airports, train stations, and ports across the nearly 5,000-kilometer or 3,100-mile-long archipelago in a mass migration known as Mudik that is similar to China's Lunar New Year holiday or Christmas. Many head to hometowns in time for celebrations, a Muslim festival known as Eid al-Fitr. Ramadan ends in mid-May this year. On Friday, the government said it was banning the exodus as Indonesia, one of the worst-hit nations in Asia, rolls out a massive inoculation campaign. Indonesia has officially reported nearly 1.5 million infections and more than 40,000 deaths. But low testing rates mean the crisis is believed to be much more severe than those figures suggest.
Meanwhile, the Philippines announced last Saturday that more than 24 million people in and around Manila will go into lockdown this week as hospitals in the capital struggle to cope with the surge in coronavirus infections. The tougher restrictions in the country's economic heartland, which accounts for about a fifth of the population, come as more contagious variants of the virus fuel a resurgence in cases. The week-long rules announced by presidential spokesperson Harry Roque apply to Metro Manila and 4 surrounding provinces which have already been placed in a travel bubble to try to prevent the spike spreading further. From Monday, people will have to work from home unless they are considered essential workers, and public transport will be halted. All mass gatherings will be banned. Nighttime curfews from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. will be enforced, and non-essential businesses will be shut. People will be allowed outside for exercise, but an existing stay-at-home order for all children and the elderly remains in place. Previous lockdowns have inflicted severe pain on the economy, but Roque said fewer work days next week or this week owing to the public holiday on the Catholic Easter on Thursday and Friday would limit disruption. Phil and I will be back right after this short break. Stay tuned.
Sila ang mga kinikilalang bayaning may mahalagang papel para makamit ang kalayaan at pagbabago sa Pilipinas. Pero sa panahong ito, may mga bagong bayaning nakikipaglaban sa sakit na lumaganap sa buong daigdig, ang COVID-19. Ang ating mga frontliner, gaya ng healthcare workers, mga doktor, nurses, medical technologists, at iba pang health professionals, mga pulis, sundalo, security guards, mga tauhan na nangangalaga sa seguridad at mahahalagang pangangailangan ng bawat komunidad. Ang mga bagong bayani, ating pasalamatan. Kilalanin ang kanilang sakripisyo at serbisyo para sa lahat.
Welcome back to the program. The Philippines remains a good investment destination despite the impact of the pandemic due to the economy's improved fundamentals. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP Governor Benjamin Diokno said in his speech during the virtual second Philippines Singapore Business and Investment Summit on Friday. Diokno reiterated that the economy entered the pandemic in a position of strength and the central bank has implemented several measures to lessen the pandemic's impact on livelihoods and the economy.
The COVID-19 pandemic caused unprecedented health, economic, and social crisis globally. For the Philippines, we entered the crisis in a position of strength. We were armed with strong macroeconomic fundamentals, which were a result of over 20 years of structural reforms. With ample monetary and fiscal space, crisis response measures were implemented swiftly and decisively. Together with the national government, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas implemented crucial measures to mitigate the pandemic's impact on livelihoods and the economy. The BSP has so far injected 2 trillion pesos, or approximately $42 billion in liquidity to the financial system. This is equivalent to 11% of the country's GDP. Our unprecedented measures fell under 3 categories. First, were measures to boost market confidence, such as cuts in the policy rate and the reserve requirement. Second were extraordinary liquidity measures, such as provisional advances to the national government and purchases of government securities in the secondary market. Third were regulatory and operational relief measures to sustain the stability of the financial system and ensure access to financial services at a critical time is in the recovery phase. And while countries are preoccupied with the rollout of vaccine programs and recovery efforts, I'm pretty sure many investors are in search of business opportunities and destinations that will provide great value for shareholders over the long haul. The Philippines is a smart investment destination, and let me explain why. First, amid a sea of credit rating downgrades and negative rating outlooks, the Philippines has maintained its investment-grade credit ratings, all of which are assigned a stable outlook. Debt watchers are one in saying that the Philippines has strong pre-crisis fundamentals.
For this year, he said the economy is expected to recover and post a growth of 6.5% to 7.5% and to register improvements in imports and exports, remittances, and foreign direct investments. Jokno said reform measures are continuously being pursued, with Congress passing, among others, the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, which will reduce corporate income tax from 30% to 20% and rationalize fiscal incentives. The domestic banking system also remains well capitalized, and debts of financial institutions remain manageable and far from levels seen in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis, he said. With all these factors, Jokno said the country's macroeconomic fundamentals remain sound and our medium-term growth prospects are bright.
In a related news, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III said the Philippines and Singapore should tap each other's strengths and explore opportunities for cooperation in developing new digital tools and technologies to take advantage of the growth of startup companies in the region. Take a look.
I urge the Singaporean business community to take a much closer look at the investment opportunities in the Philippines. I hope that our strong fundamentals, fiscal stamina, pro-business environment, and effective governance will continue to make us a promising investment destination for Singaporean investors. Thank you.
Dominguez said the forward-looking event signals that the Philippines is back in business despite the pandemic. He also cited the Duterte administration's policy of fiscal prudence to maintain the Philippines' strong financial position ahead of the pandemic, its tax reform measures and improved tax administration that raised funds for the Build infrastructure program, universal health care, and other priority projects as among the factors that have helped the country face the pandemic with strength on the fiscal front. Dominguez said he looks forward to more comprehensive dialogues with Singapore and the rest of the Philippines' fellow members in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and how they can make their regional partnerships more dynamic to enhance each other's economic recovery from the pandemic.
In other news, the giant futuristic-looking tree sculptures at Singapore's Gardens by the Way turned their lights off at 8:30 p.m. for Earth Hour, joining other cities around the world in marking the event.
And the most important thing is that it raises awareness amongst everyone. It brings out the importance of what we should be doing for the Earth, where we are headed. And by doing activities like switching off the lights or turning it all off, it gives you a time to introspect, basically to understand where we've been so far, what should be done, how much more should be done. So while Earth Hour is a good concept in itself, it's not an end itself. There has to be a lot more that needs to be done.
Significant. 1 hour is not enough to, for us to remember that climate change is actually a problem. Per se. So I don't really see it as very significant, but maybe it is a right step towards awareness to understand. To be very honest, it's not very important. Because honestly speaking, I don't even remember per se that today is explicitly Earth Hour. Because
Cities around the world were turning off their lights Saturday for Earth Hour, with this year's event highlighting the link between the destruction of nature and increasing outbreaks of diseases like COVID-19. Starting off the event at 8:30 p.m., the skylines of Asian metropolises from Singapore to Hong Kong went dark, as did landmarks including Sydney Opera House. The annual event calls for action on climate change and the environment. And this year, organizers said they want to highlight the link between the destruction of the natural world and the increasing incidence of diseases such as COVID-19, making the leap from animals to humans. Experts believe human activities such as widespread deforestation, destruction of animals' habitats, and climate change are spurring this increase, and more pandemics could occur if nothing is done. In Singapore, people at the waterfront watched as skyscrapers went dark, and in a nearby park, Gardens by the Bay, a group of futuristic-looking tree sculptures had their lights turned off. In Thailand, Bangkok's ultra-popular Central World Mall counted down to 8:30 p.m. before its exterior glass displays went dark for an hour. Though inside, the shopping center appeared to operate as usual.
Asian markets mostly rose today, extending last week's positive finish and tracking a record-breaking lead from Wall Street as investors focus on the economic recovery, while oil prices dropped on news that a cargo ship blocking the Suez Canal had been refloated. A below-forecast reading on U.S. prices on Friday provided support as it eased fears that inflation caused by an expected strong global rebound will force central banks to wind back their ultra-loose monetary policies or hike interest rates. The week ahead will provide plenty for traders to get their teeth into, including the release of key U.S. jobs data for March and figures on manufacturing activity around the world. President Joe Biden is also tipped to soon unveil the next leg of his economic recovery plan, targeting infrastructure, which some suggest could come in around $3 trillion. And that comes just as his recently passed $1.9 trillion stimulus begins to kick in. Wall Street's three main indexes finished Friday on a strong note, with the Dow and S&P 500 ending at all-time highs. And Asia built on that rally, with Tokyo, Taipei, and Jakarta all up more than 1%, while Shanghai, Hong Kong, Seoul, Singapore, Manila, Bangkok, and Wellington all enjoyed healthy gains. Sydney dipped, however, as Australian investors were spooked by news that Brisbane had been put into a 3-day lockdown. Optimism was also being supported by the success of vaccine rollouts in the U.S. and Britain, where infection rates are also slowing and officials move to ease some lockdown measures.
Thailand kicks off the Flag of the Nation relay run, led by the country's first Olympic gold medalist, Somrakam Singh, who achieved the feat in boxing at the 1996 Atlanta Games. Take a look.
เป็นนักกีฬาทีมชาติไทยคนแรกเลยนะฮะที่ได้รับรางวัลเหรียญทอง
ละ1 กิโลเมตรนั่นเองนะคะไปตลอด60 วันเลย
ถูกต้องย้ำ
ที่3ของเราแล้วนะคะ
ใช่แล้วครับเรากำลังเปลี่ยนเรียบร้อยแล้วนะฮะ
The U.S. ambassador who made a splash in Vietnam by making a rap video is getting a promotion as the top diplomat for Asia under President Joe Biden. Take a look.
Time for introductions are at hand.
Now, Daniel Crittenberg, a career diplomat who speaks Chinese and Japanese, was nominated by President Biden to be the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and the Pacific, according to a White House statement. Crittenberg became an internet sensation last month during Tet, the Lunar New Year. That is Vietnam's most important annual celebration, as he put out his own rap video to send his greetings. In a performance that combined both astute diplomatic messaging and a healthy touch of irony, Crittenberg appeared strolling the streets of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City in his suit, wearing headphones, accompanied by Vietnamese music stars. And despite his sense of humor, Crittenberg has a serious background, previously serving as the #2 at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing and as the top White House aide on Asia policy under former President Barack Obama. Now, Ambassador Crittenberg's nomination, which requires Senate confirmation, comes as tensions mount between the U.S. and China on issues ranging from human rights to trade to Beijing's assertive military moves.
Working out with aging equipment in his modest gym, a 72-year-old Malaysian bodybuilder, Aroke Sami, bench presses 2 dumbbells and then flexes his muscular arms. Aroke Sami got into bodybuilding after dropping out of school. He went on to represent Malaysia in several editions of Mr. Universe and win gold in the 1981 Southeast Asian Games in the Philippines.
I started my bodybuilding on age 18 because one of my friends recommended this event to me. Because I play all-round games, my parents stopped me playing because I fight and this. So I started bodybuilding until now I'm carrying on. So now I know that my body cannot. So like bench press last time I do about 280 pounds, 250 pounds. Now I do about 90 pounds only. Because I'm not taking any vitamin tablets or this. Cannot afford to buy that. I married my wife, I told him first thing, I told my wife, you're coming to my house, the second wife. He got a shock, no? I said my wife is the first wife in my weight.
Despite his advancing years, the champion still pumps iron every day and believes staying healthy with a vigorous routine is the best defense against the coronavirus. Aroke Sami, whose hero is Arnold Schwarzenegger, the movie star and former Mr. Universe, started coaching aspiring bodybuilders in lifting weights and opened his gym in his hometown of Teluk Intan. And I quote, "The deadly coronavirus pandemic is threatening us. We can fight it by lifting weights to stay fit." While bodybuilding may not be commonly associated with the elderly, some research suggests it does have health benefits for those getting on in life. A 2016 U.S. study found that when people aged 65 and older did strength training at least twice a week, their life expectancy improved substantially. The study, led by researchers from Penn State College of Medicine, looked at 15 years of data from more than 30,000 elderly people in the United States.
There you go. So we need to exercise to fight the coronavirus.
Correct, Alma.
But I can't lift that weights. Those weights, rather. Thank you very much, Christelle, for keeping me company today. Stay safe, always.
Yes, Alma. Just before I go, I would like to greet a happy birthday to the person who patiently taught me how to sing and who is as flawless as you, no other than my mother. Ma, happy birthday. Stay safe and happy always. She's always watching us from Abu Dhabi.
Happy birthday, Mom. She must be my age. Okay, no talking about age. Thank you, Cristel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alma. And that's the latest news around the dynamic ASEAN region. Thank you for watching. Again, I am Cristel Mapo from ABC Thailand Bureau. We live in interesting times.
And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.